Chapter 5. This is Dr. Ruby Payne, Emotional Poverty, Book 2. Adults who are stressed. And since you're watching this as a stressed adult, which I'm sure you are, if you will, go back to the chart at the end of the chapter and assess yourself. Okay? Red light, green light, yellow light. Where are you on the light? Okay? And what are your stressors? It's on page 129. Are you green, good to go? Are you red, in trouble? Are you yellow, kind of in between? We all have stressors. And the interesting thing about stress is this, where you carry it. You carry it in your body, and it's recorded in every cell of your body. And we get this idea that it's in your head. Well, it's actually in your body. And there is an indicator that you can use. It's your heart rate variability. It's on your phones. All the phones have an app for it. You can you can buy an Oura ring, O-U-R-A, will tell you your heart rate variability all the time. The bottom line, it's in your Fitbit, it's in your cell phone, if you set it up, and you can find out your heart rate variability. And what we know is that that is related to your autonomic nervous system. Because memories are stored in every cell of your body, how stressed you are, then what happens is the whole idea that I'm going to cope and suppress it doesn't work. It actually puts your body under more stress. So you have the autonomic nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system has two parts, the sympathetic part and the parasympathetic. You know, they kind of work in tandem with each other. They kind of like are foils for each other, if you will. And what we know, like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, you know, they kind of play off each other's strengths. But the sympathetic nervous system is your fire alarm. And when it goes off, the message to your whole body is there's a problem and you need to respond. Your parasympathetic system is what calms you down and relaxes you. And part of that whole system is related to your vagus nerve, which is one of the longest nerves in the body. And it records. Like, for example, if you want to calm yourself down and activate your parasympathetic nervous system, one of the fastest ways to do it is this. Just throw your arms back and go, ah, ah. And you know what you've done? Like you're looking at the sun and enjoying the weather. You have added more oxygen to your autonomic nervous system. And so one of the things you have on page 107 in your book and in page 108, examples of your parasympathetic and your autonomic nerve, your sympathetic nervous system. But if the fire bell goes off too long, if the alarm bell goes off too many times, too quickly, the sympathetic nervous system, then your body is in stress. And what we know, interestingly enough, is that the stress of the parent translates into stress for children. They did 20 years of research at the University of Wisconsin. I believe it was the University of Wisconsin, and they collected saliva samples for 20 years from the adults and their children. And when the adults were stressed, the children were stressed. And so we know that it's physical, and we know that you can do things to address it. And it's related to your mirror neurons. You have neurons that mirror what other people do. And as I said earlier, emotions are contagious. And that's one of the reasons why when you have a group of people who are angry together, like a protest, if they're angry as opposed to peaceful, that then bleeds over into the group. And it's further complicated with epigenetics. And epigenetics is when your environment changes your DNA and it changes the response of your body. We know that in the World Trade Tower at 9/11, there were 200 women in that immediate area who were pregnant. And what they did when the babies were born, they tested every one of those babies. If the baby was in the first or second trimester of pregnancy, there was nothing different about them. But every baby that was in the third trimester of pregnancy had permanently elevated levels of cortisol. In other words, they're always going to have high levels of anxiety because of that external environmental stressor. I just had a woman in a workshop last week tell me that when she was pregnant with her daughter, I think it was either the 7th or 8th month of pregnancy, they nearly had a home invasion. They had someone come in who had a gun, and she managed to stay safe, but she said it was such a terrifying experience. And she said her daughter, she said, when you said that, Ruby, my daughter has got permanently elevated levels of cortisol. She said she cried for the first 2 years of life. The bottom line is you've got intergenerational epigenetics, and not only are they carried cellularly, but they're carried through stories. And in the book, you have an example of how it gets carried intergenerationally. One of my consultants, her grandfather was African American, and he was shot and killed because he was African American. He was a sheriff, okay? And the bottom line, that story is passed intergenerationally. The trauma is passed cellularly, and so it's part of the larger pattern of stress. So when you begin thinking about your own stress level, how do you then acknowledge that it's real, and what do you do about it? And in your book now, there's a chart that helps you explain where you are on your autonomic nervous system, what the indicators are by some of your external identifiers, where you're breathing from. If you're breathing from up here, you're stressed. If you're breathing from your abdomen, you are relaxed. And what we know then is there are exercises you can do, and they're in the book, that put more oxygen in your vagus nerve, help your parasympathetic system calm down, and you can be more relaxed. We know that there are things you can do to reduce adult stress, but just knowing about them, knowing that it's stored in every cell, changes how you then to begin think about this issue.